Drama is organized very different from other forms of literature. For one, instead of chapters, drama is organized into acts, and then following acts, there are smaller sections of the act, which are called scenes. Drawing a parallel to a book length work, you might think about this as equivalent to chapters and then headings or subchapters within a chapter. The other thing that makes the organization or formatting of drama unique is that it primarily relies on direct dialogue between individual characters, meaning there's very little exposition or um, details about things like physical actions or setting. Instead, the playwright leaves a lot of that interpretation up to the director, as well as the actors. This is why different renditions of a play will have slightly different emphasis or slightly different interpretation, particularly when it comes to things like stage directions or set design. However, each play, or most plays, will begin with some scene directions or some stage directions. Um, in fact, sometimes individual acts will begin with stage directions. So there may be stage directions for Act 1, and then later a new set of stage directions for Act 2, particularly if the action in the play is changing settings or changing locales. In the case of Death of a Salesman, our first act or the play is where you're going to find really the most stage directions. And because the writer does not include very much, what is included is incredibly intentional. And so it's important to start by paying close attention to the stage directions and looking at places where they come up again and again. So just a few points to draw your attention to. The stage directions here start with sound. We get the melody of a play, played on a flute, and then that flute is compared to grass and trees on the horizon. So it's a very light flute, and it's supposed to embody this idea of freedom or expansiveness. That flute is going to come up again and again when certain characters enter the stage, and so you want to pay attention to the sound of the flute and think about what it's signaling as the play unfolds. The other thing I want to point our attention to is the description of the house. Right? So the drama takes place primarily inside the salesman's house. Other places that the main character, Willie Loman, moves to, he's often traveling to just in his mind. And so he'll move to a certain part of the house and then be having these flashbacks. And that's how most of the action of the play is unfolded. But the description of the house itself is incredibly important. The house is described as being surrounded by other buildings. You can think about a New York City block with sort of high-rise apartment buildings, and they're crowding out this tiny house that's in the middle. The image there is, again, very intentional. It's supposed to be evocative of change, something that our main character, our protagonist, Willie Loman, is very resistant to. It also is bringing up tension around the ideas of urbanization versus sort of Western expansiveness. So we have some kind of landscape symbolism built into the stage directions as well. And then towards the end, we start to get the playwright being very direct in terms of telling us a bit about the emotional and psychological makeup of both Willie Loman and his wife. So this week, I'm asking you to pay close attention to the stage directions and make some predictions about if you're not familiar with the play, make some predictions about what these stage directions might signal to us about themes or action in the play. And if you are familiar with the play,